Well, thank you very much for being here today. I'm Marc Veasey, Congressman for the 33rd Congressional District, Fort Worth, Arlington, Dallas, Irving, and appreciate you taking the time to come out here and ask questions. Of course, we have a very distinguished guest with us, who is the Democratic leader of the Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries of Brooklyn, New York. And I want to thank him for taking the time to come over to Fort Worth to talk about some of the healthcare concerns that we have as we go into this new Congress, some potential cuts that could impact a lot of the communities like where we're standing right now, and wanted to be able to entertain some of your questions. So please ask us any questions that you may have, and I'll turn it over to the congressman. Sorry, I turn it over to the leader to answer to offer some remarks, and then we'll do some questions.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's an honor and a privilege to be here in Fort Worth, in North Texas, and certainly to join my good friend and an incredible colleague, Congressman Marc Veasey. We had a wonderful tour and conversation with healthcare leaders throughout the community, all of whom expressed real concern with the potential harmful impact of some of the proposed cuts to the healthcare network and funding in the United States of America that would impact the people of North Texas. We're committed to making sure that incredibly important safety net programs like Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, and nutritional assistance that benefits children, seniors, and veterans are unharmed by the current Republican attempt to pass a budget that is designed to enact massive tax cuts for billionaires and wealthy corporations and then stick working class Texans and working class Americans with the bill. This is all being contemplated over the next few weeks, and it's going to be incredibly important for the American people to have an understanding of the devastating cuts to healthcare that are being proposed and to make sure that their voices are heard in this debate, which I am confident will certainly be done here in Fort Worth as a result of the leadership of Marc Veasey.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Are there any questions that y'all have?
Hey, Mike Lee with E&E News. Can you talk a little bit about some of the climate and infrastructure funding? How do you feel that's going to come out in the budget process?
It also appears that the Republican budget is going to target some of the climate funding that relates to wind and solar and the clean energy economy, which in many parts of Texas has actually emerged as a driving force for some economic development and activity. That is something that is important for us to watch and monitor, and could also result in a reduction in economic growth and activity here in Texas and across the country. With respect to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding, we are working hard to make sure that funding that was allocated by Congress, often on a bipartisan basis, actually reaches the states like Texas, as opposed to an unelected, unaccountable, out of control billionaire like Elon Musk getting to determine what the people of Texas do or do not receive.
I think it's going to be interesting, too, to see how some of our Republican colleagues respond to that. You probably saw that because of those cuts, that there was a project in outside of Savannah, Georgia, represented by a Republican member of Congress in that delegation. I believe it's Rick Lee and Rick Allen. And now that project has been canceled because there's so much uncertainty about whether or not these credits are going to be rewarded. And it's going to be interesting to see if...
Norwegian battery company?
Yes, yeah. And so it's going to be interesting to see if Republicans are willing to stand up and fight for jobs in their districts, or whether or not they're going to go along with this madness.
Hey, Bradford Davis with the Fort Worth Star Telegram. Where do you see this country in 90 days on its current trajectory?
Well, the American people have been subjected to a flood of far-right extremism and outrageous activity. It's not going to make the quality of life of everyday Americans better. It's going to make it worse. My Republican colleagues and current President Trump spent all of last year promising to drive down the high cost of living while also pretending not to know anything about Project 2025. This year, they spent all of their time implementing the most extreme parts of Project 2025 in ways that will undermine the health, safety, national security, and economic well-being of the American people while doing nothing to address the high cost of living. This is an unsustainable trajectory that we are on as a country. In fact, inflation hasn't gone down. Inflation is going up. Costs aren't going down. Costs are going up. And public safety is being jeopardized by efforts to decimate the FBI and the Department of Justice. As House Democrats, we're going to continue to work hard to focus on the things that matter as it relates to making life better for everyday Texans and everyday Americans, while at the same time pushing back against the extremism that threatens the well-being of the American people.
Got throw in another question. Are any?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Step forward, like you're kind of halfway shaking, so I don't know if that's possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it better over here or?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, okay.
We're kind of like half shaded.
Okay.
Yeah, sun's in your eyes.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah.
Apparently there's talks going on permitting reform. Are any Democrats in either the House or the Senate involved in that?
Yeah, what do you want to?
I serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee. I would like to see some permitting reform. Of course, I hope that it is not only for oil and gas, which is obviously a big part of the Texas economy, but renewable is a huge part of our economy as well. I hope that the Republicans don't decide that they're just going to do hydrocarbons and leave out what's become a big part of the Texas economy, and that's wind and solar. I mean, a lot of people forget that ERCOT last year did about 30% on the grid. That was wind and solar. And so renewables is a big job driver here, is a big part of our grid and a big part of the Texas economy. And we're really leading the way in that area. And I would hate to see it slow down.
Right.
I got one for you. The roundtable, since we're not able to get in there and hear what is going on, how effective was it? What did you take away from it? Can you separate like?
Yeah, it was an incredibly informative discussion where healthcare leaders throughout North Texas made clear that if the devastating cuts being proposed by House Republicans were to occur, people here in the DFW area will get hurt. And in fact, it's very likely that children or people with disabilities, pregnant women, or older Americans will actually die. It was searing to hear from healthcare providers that is the reality of the situation if the hundreds of billions of dollars of cuts proposed by House Republicans and the Trump administration were to make it into law. And it was another reminder of why there are real life consequences at stake and why we need to make sure we're doing everything possible to protect the health care of the people of Texas and of the American people.
We're going to have to wrap up. One more question.
Yeah. President Trump's working on, unilaterally freezing spending, a budget that is explicitly required by laws passed by Congress. Where do you see your role, the party's role in enforcing the law and disciplining the behavior?
It's an all hands on deck effort in the Congress, in the courts, and in the community. We're working with attorney generals throughout the country, including Attorney General Tish James in New York, many of whom have brought legal action to block the unlawful funding freeze that was initially put into effect as a result of the Office of Management and Budget order. And now in the Congress, it's our responsibility to make sure that funding that is allocated, passed in the House and the Senate, and then signed into law by the president is actually spent. The Constitution is very clear. Congress appropriates the money in the best interest of the American people, and the executive branch then has a responsibility to spend it. That's not happening in America right now. That's unlawful. It's unconscionable. It's un-American. It's unconstitutional. And we're going to do everything that we need to do to stop it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.